Insofar as the individual wants to maintain himself against other individuals, he will, under natural circumstances, employ the intellect mainly for dissimulation. But at the same time, that doesn't really sound like what we're being told when we're talking about the superlative, huh? But at the same time, from boredom and necessity, man wishes to exist socially and without the herd. Therefore, he needs to make peace and strives accordingly to banish, and with the herd, not without, and to banish from his world at least the most flagrant bellum omni contra omnes. This peace treaty brings in its wake something which appears to be the first step towards acquiring that puzzling truth drive, to wit, that which shall count as truth, quote unquote, from now on is established. That is to say, a uniformly valid and binding designation is invented for things, and this legislation of language likewise establishes the first laws of truth. For the contrast between truth and lie arises here for the first time. You understand? For the first time, these are inventions of man, he's saying. The liar is a person who uses the valid designations, the words, in order to make something which is unreal appear to be real. He says, for example, quote, I am rich, unquote, when the proper designation for his condition would be, quote unquote, poor. He misuses fixed conventions by means of arbitrary substitutions or even reversals of names. If he does this in a selfish manner and moreover harmful manner, society will cease to trust him and will thereby exclude him. What men avoid by excluding the liar is not so much being defrauded as it being harmed, as it is being harmed by means of fraud. Thus, even at this stage, what they hate is basically not deception itself, but rather the unpleasant hated consequences of certain sorts of deception. This is very important because we take it that lying's bad and we don't want to be deceived, but then we deceive ourselves all the time. It is in a similarly restricted sense that man now wants nothing but truth. He desires the pleasant, life-preserving consequences of truth. He is indifferent toward pure knowledge, which has no consequences, toward those truths which are possibly harmful and destructive. He is even hostilely inclined. And besides, what about these linguistic conventions themselves? Are they perhaps products of knowledge, that is, of the sense of truth? Are designations congruent with things? Is language the adequate expression of all realities? And obviously he's implying that no, it is not. It is only the means of forgetfulness that man can ever, it is only by means of forgetfulness that man can ever reach the point of fancying himself to possess a, quote, truth of the grade just indicated. It is only by means of forgetfulness, right? So it is only by means of a flaw. If he will not be satisfied with truth in the form of tautology, again, this is what I say, that is to say, if he will not be content with empty husks, then he will always exchange truths for illusions. This is a problem for philosophers, that humans prefer the illusions. What is a word? It is the copy and sound of a nerve stimulus. Very sophisticated for him to say that, 1873. I believe it's a real translation as far as I know. But the further inference from the nerve stimulus to a cause outside of us is already the result of a false and unjustifiable application of the principles of sufficient reason. If truth alone had been the deciding factor in the genesis of language, and if the standpoint of certainty had been decisive for designations, then how could we still dare to say, quote, the stone is hard, unquote, as if, quote, hard, unquote, were something otherwise familiar to us and not merely a totally subjective stimulation? We separate things according to gender, designating the tree as masculine and the plant as feminine. What arbitrary assignments? This is implied in English, right? How far this oversteps the canons of certainty. We speak of a quote-unquote snake. This designation touches only upon its ability to twist itself. and could therefore also fit a worm. What arbitrary differentiations? This is sort of a weak part, if you ask me. But what one-sided preferences, first for this, then for that property of a thing? And starts to get apt again. The various languages placed side by side show that with words, it is never a question of truth, never a question of adequate expression. Otherwise, there would not be so many languages. Oh, this is good. The, quote, thing in itself, which is precisely what the pure truth apart from any of its consequences would be, is likewise something quite incomprehensible to the creator of language, and something not in the least worth striving for. This creator only designates the relations of things to man, and for expressing those relations, he lays hold upon the biggest and upon the boldest metaphors. To begin with, a nerve stimulus is transferred into an image. First, metaphor. The image, in turn, is imitated in a sound. Second, metaphor. And each time, there is a complete overleaping of one sphere right into the middle of an entirely new and different one. One can imagine a man who is totally deaf and has never had a sensation of sound and music. Perhaps such a person will gaze with astonishment at Chladni's sound figures. Perhaps he will discover their causes in the vibrations of the string and will now swear that he must know what men mean by sound. It is this way with all of us concerning language. We believe that we know something about the things themselves when we speak of trees, colors, snow, and flowers. So clearly he's pointing out that these forms, these surface ideas that we attach to the words, are in a sense illusions, but not just any kind of illusions, not just totally wrong illusions, but illusions that go out of their way to ignore significant facts about, whatever the word refers to. And yet we possess nothing but metaphors for things. And this is really, I highlighted this because it's funny how much this paper is about cognitive science. And if it isn't really by Nietzsche, then that's why, because it's some cognitive science coming in here. Because now I believe it sounds like Nietzsche, because the love of metaphor is one of the things that you find in Nietzsche. And it's just funny because in cognitive science, there's certainly a group of cognitive science that that holds that basically all human thinking is metaphorical. Metaphors which correspond in no way to the original entities. In the same way that the sound appears as a sound figure, so the mysterious X of the thing in itself first appears as a nerve stimulus, then as an image, finally as a sound. Thus, the genesis of language does not proceed logically in any case, and all the material within and with which the man of truth, the scientist, and the philosopher later work and build, if not derived from Never Never Land, is at least not derived from the essence of things.